get ready to be on your toes.
Listen, if it doesn't go well, we can just delete it, right?
The use of AI has become an essential part of every consultant's toolkit. And we at Dalberg, not only as an impact consulting firm, but one that has an energy practice that you yourself has led, recognize that AI prompting is an extremely energy intensive process and there are massive environmental ramifications of that. Should we not be more judicious with our AI use?
The judicious aspect of AI use is very broad. So let me actually start with the excuse narrative. The same is true in climate change, right? I work a lot in the climate space, but I fly everywhere. Now, what is the way that we excuse ourselves? We excuse ourselves on the notion that the extra footprint that we're creating is being offset by the benefit that perhaps is being generated since we are working on trying to solve some of those issues. And it is true to some extent, right? I think that excuse is fair if it is, backed up with what you do. And I think, if AI is helping us to get to a deeper and better answer for our clients, then more impact is being created and perhaps that net benefit versus the extra energy use is justified, right? So that's the excuse side of it, right? Uh-huh. It is not an airtight argument. But I will admit, there's truth to that. There is an aspect of everything we do. I mean, before AI, we were using electricity anyway. We're turning on computers. Everything has every part of what we do, the materials we use, the footprint we create, we have to believe that is a necessary part of doing business and that doing our business is a good thing. Now, where is it a poor excuse? And why do I use the word excuse? Is I think this can also become a crutch on which not to change your behaviors. Right now, I can see that using some of these tools is going to save an enormous amount of time. It's going to stop me doing 20 Google searches, right? But it comes with a carbon footprint.
Okay.
And in this immediate world, we need to get into this technology. We need to use it. We need to understand its limitations. And I'm pretty comfortable not starting out by putting sort of a fence around it. But I think your question is a great one, which is we need to figure out at what point is this becoming a crutch? At what point am I just using ChatGPT when I could be using other things just as good?
Right?
But now it's just practice. Now I've switched from automatically thinking about Google whenever I think about typing to now automatically thinking about a ChatGPT or Perplexity, etc. And so we do need to watch out for that. And at the same time, I think we should be looking to build out work in how do we push ethical AI, which includes the way AI is thinking about energy usage and where it's drawing that from.
And if I were to push back a little bit and ask you for something specific, so recognizing that this can become a crutch, what kind of pioneering steps could a firm like Dalberg take to sort of set that precedent and say, hey, where can we take a step after recognizing the line?
So I imagine there's some stuff which is just hard work that should get done, which is doesn't take away from the efficiency aspect. So, and this answer is going to demonstrate to you that the hard work hasn't been done, right? Which is, I imagine that even within these tools, there are sort of each tool, each company, each structure may actually have a different implication for the environment. Maybe some of the companies are just more environmentally friendly in the way they have engaged. That is certainly true for broader ethics. There's a very, emerging clear consensus around some of those AI organizations have gathered their evidence base, their data, etc., and are operating in a manner which is maybe closer to the kind of values that we would ascribe to versus others. So have we sort of sat down and said, okay, well, we're only going to use these because these are closer to our values? No, we have not. And probably we should get there pretty quickly. There is an element of also our attitude to AI, which is less, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but we're a small organization with limited ability to invest in a field which is moving extremely fast. It's changing literally every day. And I think the right thing to do is this is a place where culture will win over investment. And so I want us to build a prototyping culture Like, just let's go around and experiment, see what's good, see what's bad, and then quickly adopt the thing that's good. And I think that can actually help us win over competitors who might be slow moving culturally, but may have hundreds of millions of dollars to invest in their own proprietary tool and so forth. And I'd rather encourage, what we have is this core team that's meant to go and experiment, to let them experiment a bit.
Fair. Shout out to Sachi and the entire KN team that's doing some pretty fun work on that. And you spoke about the USP at Dalberg being culture. There is a recognition that no amount of education and soft skills can substitute for the insight that comes from living and working within beneficiary communities itself. And so, where do you see the limits of learned versus lived knowledge, and how can we structurally include more on-ground practitioners into our work?
Yeah. And it's also an interesting question to be asking, given you've also just been speaking about AI, right? Where AI is sort of taking the sum total of expressed lived experience. Expression from lived experience itself loses fidelity. Who's doing the expression then loses inclusivity, right? And now this just feels like a bit of a shortcut I can take, right? I'm like, well, I can analyze what are all the commentary that's going on Facebook and so forth, which of course, also excluding a lot of people, but that argument can also be stretched a bit too far. There's an enormous amount of even digitization of data that's coming out of communities we may be thinking are excluded, that today, you can get that sort of averaged view and so forth. So it's a really, the premium is dying at a moment where it's probably more important, where lots of people have this shortcut, like, do I need to be on the ground? Do I need to hire Parth to go and visit these communities? Or do I even need to have these communities sit down with me and give their own perspective and feedback directly, which is inexpensive and for many people an uncomfortable, much as their intentionality might be strong. That doesn't mean they have the skill set to be able to engage with very different cultures and languages and so forth, right? And there's high transaction cost. So now you have shortcuts. You have AI and lots of other things that technology might provide you those shortcuts, where actually it's even more important to get that sort of nuance. But also, it has never only been about data. It's never only been about you need to speak to communities because that's where you get the real data from. You need to speak to communities because they have a right to their own governance of the answer. How do we actually, instead of doing an interview with a member of a community that we're trying to understand and potentially serve, and then, at times you might even say, well, here's some money for that and so forth. How do we actually think about community members as themselves experts like us and value their time similarly to how we value our time? So we have, a grassroots organization like Coro, one of our clients in Bombay that you may be familiar with, this work going on right now. And they have this beautiful network of grassroots leaders in lots and lots of communities. And one of the things that we said to them is, look, those community leaders in the subject that they're dealing with are as experts as we are. I mean, not even as greater in those communities, but we are experts on certain things, they're experts on things. It's not clear to me that we should be paid hundreds of dollars a day and they should be paid nothing or $10 for an interview. And so we have this agreement to say, how do we get grassroots organizations to be part of a broader consulting network? But we value their time equivalent to how we value our time.
I would ask you exactly on that. What's the hardest barrier then to doing this at scale?
Look, there's a difference between intentionality and execution. What we build is a common culture, even if we're bringing in a diverse set of folks, a set of tools, languages that, we increasingly codify, right? That's the Dalberg craft. And that is actually the secret sauce to taking a client problem and working on it and solving it in 2-3 months. There's no objective truth in any of our work. No one is able to achieve objective truth. All we can say is, okay, I've got this much time, this much budget. How do I quickly get to an answer? The hurdle for when your intentionality is like, I need to, get lots of voices in. I need this to be as inclusive as possible. I need this to be fair and so forth. These are all good things. In some ways, they compete with a central notion of time and money to make a decision. And that's an okay thing, because the opposite would be also nonsense, where every issue that the world is dealing with, people are spending 12 years or 5 years of a PhD on. Nothing would get done. It's okay to live in a world in which we don't know if we're getting to the best answer, but we're improving the chances of a good answer with limited money so that we can move on to another problem.
Consulting firms have an increasingly bad reputation for profiting from inefficiencies and ignoring outcome delivery. And opinions are gaining traction that a consulting crash is imminent. It's a hot topic. So I wanted to ask you, if you were to fast forward 10 years, what would Dalberg have done that had it come through this crash or this skepticism of consulting work? And what would we have done right, which we have to be doing today?
Maybe I'm just being reactive, and this may be my age and being somebody who's done this for a long time. So there may be too much heavy bias, but I've heard the consulting crash and the profiting from inefficiencies. And I'm like, well, it feels like a conspiracy theory. And I'll tell you why. Think about all those intelligent people who are writing checks. You build a firm like ours, which we built from a one-person firm up, right? It is built on the back of lots and lots of clients saying, great, I'm going to sign what can be a hefty check. The first NGO we worked with, which, by the way, 10 years later, we then had to redo their strategy, and it was really lovely to come back to them after their 10 years. I remember they wrote a check and we looked at their numbers and we're like, oh my God, we are 2-3% of the actual cost base. Nobody writes you that check if they don't think they're going to get value. We're a discretionary spend. We're not lawyers. You don't need us. You don't need it. We're not investment bankers. You don't need us to make a transaction happen. We're discretionary spend. And so think about that for decades with all these different people and mostly repeat clients. They're spending money because you're not, where there's no value being delivered, is utter nonsense. It's a conspiracy theory. It's like all of us are in on it. Mm-hmm. Right? And these are intelligent, dedicated human beings, and some who I just, put on a pedestal. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this person's hiring me. Right? Now, is there bad consulting work? Sure. Is there bad everything? Sure. Right? But this idea that we're just profiting from inefficiency that's also nonsense. Think about what's the easiest thing to sell, right? The easiest thing to sell is for me to be able to say, I can create an enormous amount of value, additional value for you than what you're creating today. That's when someone wants to sign a check. Someone who's like, going down the gurgler, is, facing pressures all across, actually discretionary spend on 300-400K of consulting work is the first thing they'll cut by the premise. And then the second thing of like, there's a reckoning. The only other reckoning I've seen as well, every time there's a big technology shift, right? There's a conversation on business models that fail and business models that emerge. So I think my LinkedIn is flooded with, actually it's quite interesting. People talking about the end of consulting because of AI. No. And there's like 100 of them, but all say the same thing, which is exactly what convinces me that this is not going to change. Because if the guy who was promoting the AI component are all copying each other, then I'm pretty sure that that's not what a client's going to pay for. Because even their talking points are exactly the same, right? And I've been through this cycle myself. I was there in 2000 when the first dot-com boom happened, which was back in 2000, actually, not 2008 and stuff. But and then bust in 2001. Right? And there was all this stuff of like, it's the end of consulting, it's this and so forth. We've got information is now free, so why would you pay? And lots of other people, etc. Our job, especially good consultants, is to fundamentally navigate ambiguity by putting structure around new emerging issues where structure does not exist. That, by the way, is why we do case interviews. So that's why actually the opposite happens. Because in each of the times that people have talked about this is dead, some of the best firms have doubled in size. Now, is that going to happen in AI? Well, maybe, maybe not. Every you should never just think about the past. There are fundamental shifts in technology that may take certain aspects of business models out. For us, it's about saying, do I want you to be spending a lot of time Googling and then stitching that together? No. Now I want you to create new stuff. I want you to predict the future. I don't want you to just tell us what the landscape is. I think that's a more exciting way to use our talent. Our talent is top talent. You did not go to school and spend all those years trying to come first in class or whatever you were trying to do as a sense of achievement, to then work in a job where most of it is about gathering the information that is there today, synthesizing and presenting it. That is a high intelligence job, but there's a higher intelligence job of saying, given all the different pieces of information, I think 5 years from now, the world is going to look like this. And I think that is where a lot of consultants, good consultants, will be able to, what they'll be able to do with their 2-3 months they have with clients, as opposed to just explain the world as it is.